I teach a class to college students, and I tell the class every year, if you want to go be an entrepreneur, you want to go start your own business, the first thing you should do is go get a job.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, where we will be discussing the struggles and lessons learned along the journey of a seven-figure entrepreneur. It's my privilege to welcome our guest today, Justin Sirotin with Octo. Justin, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, before we waste too much time, let's go ahead and just jump right in. Justin, as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, please share with us your journey. Where did you start from? Where have you gotten to? And maybe share a few key lessons learned along the way.
I started my career as an industrial designer, what feels like a million years ago, and joined an agency on the East Coast that was sort of just kind of finding its footing. It had actually been in business for 15 years, and I was employee number 10. And I'll come back to why that's relevant to the rest of the path that I've been on since. Because from me being hired at employee number 10 to the time when that business got sold about 17 years later, we went from 10 to about 300 employees.
Wow.
I don't even know what the revenue growth was. I'm gonna say we were, because I was right out of school. Nobody told me anything. So I'm gonna say our revenue at the time was probably 1 to 2 million, and by the time it sold, it was in the $40-50 million range.
Gotcha.
I actually didn't stay on for that entire path. I was on from employee number 10 to about 125 people, and I got to a position where I was running about a $10 million P&L for two other people who own the business, whom I respected very, very much. They taught me kind of everything for those first 11 years. But I sat across the table from them and I just said, okay, I want to sit in your seat. You're not leaving. This is your company.
Right.
There's no other seat for me to sit in. So I took the leap. I was 34 years old and I started a furniture company making very high-end game table furniture for primarily the residential markets, a little bit of the commercial markets. And they were all made here in Rhode Island, which is where I'm based. Cool. I had a background in design. I had a background in manufacturing, but I did not have a background in building a business. And I got to sit in the other seat for, the whole first part of my career, which is extremely different than sitting in the seat when you're the one whose bank account and deadline and reputations on the line. So, but that I found that juxtaposition of roles to be really valuable as I've gone from then sitting in the seat where someone has told me what they want to then sitting in the seat where now I'm asking others to help build something.
Right.
I teach a class to college students, and I tell the class every year, if you want to go be an entrepreneur, you want to go start your own business, the first thing you should do is go get a job. And then you will learn what it's like to be an employee, which will make you a better employer when you're in that seat. And one of my critiques of the two guys who I worked for, who, like I said, I have a ton of respect for, two really brilliant guys. They started their business right out of school, and they really had a hard time relating to that relationship between this seat and the seat across the table, where you're asking somebody to stay late, to do something they don't know how to do, to take a little risk that they weren't expecting to take. So I started that business in 2000, end of 2007. Technically speaking, the last day of my full-time job where somebody paid me a salary that I didn't have to go get myself was the day that they backdated the Great Recession to.
Oh, wow.
So literally to the day. I left the last day of November. That was the date that they said that's when the recession started, last day of November, 2007.
Wow.
So I got to kind of miss the mess that was 2008 because I was building a company anyway. I had no income. I had no expectation for income. We weren't trying to even make a sale yet. We were a full startup. We were trying to hit a show date of that May, I think it was, to kind of birth the business. So you were just heads down, long days, long nights. I had young kids. It was kind of a mess. And that business got off the ground in sort of mid 2008 into 2009. Never did I expect the challenges that we went through to try to get that thing moving. You know, you kind of look at your idea and you say, like, this
Right.
is a good idea. Once we put this out there, everybody's going to want it. It taught me a lot. It taught me to really respect marketing. It taught me to really respect channel, understanding that sales channel, understanding that communication channel that goes between somebody selling something and somebody buying something became really clear to me over the time that we tried to grow that business. The company ultimately, I shut the company down in 2015, which, if I'm looking at lessons learned, I waited too long to
Okay.
step away from that, to just sort of say, this is not working. And when the unit economics don't work, the unit economics don't work. Like, there's no version of the business that's going to miraculously work if the unit economics aren't there. So we were trying to do something pretty difficult. You know, we were selling direct to an audience that we didn't know very well. I am not from just to give you some perspective, our pool tables, we made pool tables, foosball tables, dartboard cabinets, and the like. Our pool tables started at something like $35,000 and went up. You know, our foosball tables were 15 grand. I got to go to Michael Jordan's house in Jupiter, Florida to install a pool table just before his 50th birthday party. I don't remember what year. I grew up in Chicago in the 80s. That was like, I could have walked out of the business on that day and just been like,
Right.
that's it. We did it. And we installed a ping pong table and a pool table in his house. He wasn't there. I never met him. But that was the audience that we were targeting. And when you don't really have a clear understanding for that audience and what that audience needs, it's really difficult to sell to them. It's really difficult to market to them. It's hard to identify with them. All those things sort of played a role in ultimately that business not succeeding. And, you know, I think I fell victim to this idea that the spreadsheet somehow tells the future, and that spreadsheet
Right.
allows you to really um, predict what's going to sell and what's not going to sell. That spreadsheet says the business should make money, but when you sort of dial it all back and you really look at it honestly, we got to this point in about 2014 where it was very clear the business was not going to succeed. We had sold a lot of product, we just didn't make any money.
Gotcha.
Um, and so, come the end of 2014, we did our final trade show. We had a buyer from Barney's, before Barney's went under, come to our booth. We made a chess set that was beautiful and very expensive. And they put a purchase order in to buy every single one of our existing remaining inventory of that chess set. And I took the PO. I delivered all the product. We sold. This is what really drove home this point about understanding the audience and channel.
Right.
We sold every single chess set we gave. Now, these are $3,000 chess sets. We
Okay.
sold out in 2 days at
Wow.
in Barney's. It wasn't a ton of sets. It was maybe 35 sets, 40 sets. But to us, that was a huge number.
Right.
The margin on that sale gave us enough cash to pay down most of the debt. And so, literally, as soon as we delivered it, I shut the doors. And Barney's called a week or two later and said, "Hey, we sold out. Can we get another 50?" And I said, "No." And we're not in business anymore, and hung up the phone. And
Oh,
so that was sort of the first chapter. At the same time that business was not making money and I wasn't able to figure out how to make money, I started an agency alongside. I
okay.
came out of the agency world. I knew how the product development agency world worked. I knew that business really well. I had lots of contacts in that business. And that is Octo. That's the company that exists today. So
Okay.
that company got started in 2008 or 9. I actually don't know when it started. It started in and around 8 or 9 because I just needed an income. And I went from me by myself to then adding an employee to then adding another employee. And at this stage, we're sitting in and around 20 people. Uh, those first two employees still, their desks are right out there. They still work here.
That's awesome.
So that makes me feel really good that we've built an environment where two young, very talented people right out of RISD, they were both older students. They were both in their late 20s when they started with me, um, have been confident enough in the business to stick around for 15 years.
Right.
Um, Actually, the third employee is still here as well. So numbers 1, 2, and 3 are still here,
That's
which is
awesome.
makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, and so that company was born born out of need, not born out of want. I actually did not want to build another product development agency. I wanted a product business,
Gotcha.
and but I knew how to do the product development world pretty well. And so we were pretty successful pretty fast. And that's where that unit economics and that whole like trajectory learning curve starts, where you have one business kind of trundling along and the other business really starting to go.
Right.
So it was a pretty easy decision to just go, okay, put this away, grab this, and let's just see where this goes. So Octo then, roll up the clock to sort of 2017, 2018. We then diversify the business from doing physical products only to doing both physical products and digital products. So we added an entire digital team to it. So the company today builds software and hardware solutions. It also builds what we call in our space they would be called experiences. So it's taking a product solution and wrapping it inside of some either visual, digital, or physical experience that then you can go when you go to a trade show and you walk into a space and somebody's got this sort of visceral, visual, interactive experience around some part of their business. That's the kind of thing that we would design.
Very cool.
We feel like we're pretty good at that because we also build the underlying technology that is the revenue generating solution. Whereas normally you have two different groups doing that work.
Right.
And so the group that comes in over the top kind of doesn't understand how does the stuff work, what's the customer need, what's the pain point you're solving, and so we kind of tackle that. So um, then if you carry on and you get to 2020, everybody's businesses gets turned upside down come
Right.
March 2020. We've been kicking around this idea for a couple of years about building another product business, but I was admittedly a little gun shy. So
Right.
I kind of went the total opposite end of the spectrum. First time I did it, I said, I don't know this category. I don't know these people. These are really expensive. I can't afford one. And then I went straight into a category that I love and know well, which is the cycling industry. So I've spent my whole life, I raced bikes in college. I ride bikes all the time. I thought I knew it really well until I got into the business. And then I realized how much I didn't know.
Right.
So come 2020, our consulting business kind of does this really fast, like within days. Everybody
Right.
starts pulling POs. I've got a very talented staff, and I just said, okay, let's just go. Let's just take that little idea we had in the background, and let's go see if we can make something out of it. So, roll up the clock to to fall 2020, and we do a Kickstarter, and we launch this bag, which goes on the handlebar of your bicycle.
Okay.
Has we own a patent on the mechanism that holds it to your bike. So you can pop it on, take it off in a second. And then it has a mount up top where you put your computer, your phone, whatever other device you want to put on it. And then it
Wow.
opens as you ride. It's got pockets in it so you can grab everything you want as you go. It's relatively water resistant. It's not waterproof. And we put this product on the market now because the agency has deep contacts in the supply side. We were able to leverage all of that knowledge that we have, put a product in the market with good unit economics, with good margins, in a channel we understand, to a customer we can relate to. Uh, and that business did $320,000 in the first month
Wow.
as a Kickstarter. From there, then the story gets harder, right? Like you have this big
Right.
pop, and then you're dealing with the 2021 inventory starvation that goes on across the world. Then you're dealing with the bike industry full on collapse that occurred in 2022. So everybody bought bikes in 20 and 21. by 2022, everybody stops buying bikes. And so we've been through the roller coaster. We raised capital, we raised private capital to back that business. So my agency continues to roll along. This now grows up beside it. And so as you kind of navigate your way to where we are today, we now have two businesses running side by side. We've got the product business that is spun out fully. It's managed separately. It's got a completely different org structure, different governance. And then we have the agency that takes client work and builds out on our clients' needs and creates software solutions, hardware solutions, and experiences. And so those two worlds are kind of where I live now. I happen to teach the manufacturing techniques class at the Rhode Island School of Design, Industrial Design Department, which my first day of the semester is in 3.5 hours. 2.5 hours, sorry.
There you go.
So that's sort of the full journey. So the delta between the two businesses is this costs $189 made overseas. We develop things like this, which costs thousands of dollars. We get involved in dealing with all of this madness. This product is made to control a machine called a coordinate measurement machine in the manufacturing sector. So it's a human machine interface device. We built all of the software that lives on top. We integrate that software with a back end that's pre-existing. We have all of the HMI controls that live on the front end. We then help support the production. That product happens to be made in China, developed by a group who's out of Taiwan. And so we have these two parallel worlds, or I have these two parallel worlds, and I do everything I can to keep a wall between them. From my staff on the agency side and my team on the product side, to not sort of muddy the waters there. So I, and as we come into today, our goals now are a bit more bold, to try to go from this sort of world of small time product company on one hand, boutique agency on the other hand, to say, okay, let's see if we can make a run at this. And as I go back to the beginning of my story, I'm in exactly the same spot as the other person in the chair as when I got hired into my first job. They had been in business, as I said, about 15 years. I have been in business about 15 years, and we have just hit that spot on the agency side where we have launched our first industry-focused vertical as a part of our practice. And we have two more we're going to launch as we start to shift the direction of the agency away from, do you have a project? We can help you, to, we are experts in these categories. Let us support your needs. And so that's kind of that's my story so
Awesome.
far.
No, that's incredible. I love the intentionality around saying, "Hey, now I'm to a point where," because when you first start a business, it's super easy to get stuck in the rut of always saying yes to somebody. They come to you, "Yes, I can do that. Oh, I can help you with that. Oh, absolutely, I want to do that." But to have the intentionality around, okay, but I know that these are the areas in which we are the experts.
Yeah.
Based on our knowledge and skill set, these are what we're going to focus on now. And so now you're to a point where you can intentionally say no, which is not easy.
It's hard.
It's extremely hard.
I actually think it's the hardest part of running of any business is being able to look at something and go, yes, that's a 6-figure project, and no, we shouldn't take it.
Yeah.
It's super hard.
Yeah, because now you're to a point where you understand, hey, just because this is something that we can help you with doesn't mean that we should, because it's not going to necessarily be financially responsible of us to do that. And quite frankly, small business owners find themselves in that rut too often, where they're taking on jobs that they really shouldn't be because they're not profitable to them. They just see, oh yes, this is work, I'm going to bring it, my team's going to be busy, but at the end of the day, it's not where it needs to be because they haven't taken the steps necessary to be intentional about deciding, hey, who's my ideal customer? How am I going to
Right.
serve them? And is that going to be something that's sustainable and repeatable for my business so that it fits within my business model so I can continue to
Yeah. It,
grow and
it's
develop.
totally true. And one of the things that I think, I'm in the MIT VMS program, which is got a chapter here in Rhode Island. So I end up mentoring other startups and young entrepreneurs. And one of the challenges that I think we all run into, I certainly did in droves at the early days, is you actually can't pick the lane when it's early. It's not actually possible. You think you can because you look at it and you say, okay, well, we wrote this plan. This is what we did at the first business. We wrote this plan, therefore.
Right.
Well, I actually think there's value early on to being open to, I'll try that.
Yeah.
But then there's a point at which that tendency is a harm because of the opportunity cost of doing that work against doing the work that you have. I mean, we just turned down a project 2 weeks ago, a week ago, and it was a nice project. Like we could have done it. It would have been great. Local company, easy. Like we could drive there, which is really unusual for us. But a lot of our customers are international. Like we're flying all over the place.
Right.
And I left the first meeting and I thought like, okay, these guys seem legit. This is a real business. This could be super interesting. We can help them. And you sleep on it, you get to the next day and then you're like, but if we do this, then we can't do all these other things. And
Right.
all these other things are actually in the direction of where the business is headed. And that's the old version of our company, that project over there. So, but I couldn't have done that. Like I couldn't have had that conversation with myself uh, even 5 years ago.
Right.
Never mind now. And I struggle with it today. I struggle with it every day of like, is this really where we should put our energy
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah.
So it's a
$1 million
it's a
question, right?
it is, and it really it causes you to think differently about how you spend your time,
Yeah.
and you're not just saying, "I'm just chasing everything that's out there." I'm gonna intentionally spend my time thinking about and talking to people who are in the lane that I'm trying to drive into. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens in the bike business too. As odd as that sounds, like
Oh, I'm sure.
that business can't just chase everything. It's got to like, okay, we need dealers and distributors. We have a direct business. Stick to the program. Don't get distracted by the company that calls you and says, "Hey, can I put this bag in a commercial? Can I put this on TV? Can I put like none of that's going to do anything."
Right.
And even though it sounds amazing to have I have a pool table. I just watched the movie Grown Ups, and I had forgotten that we put a pool table in Grown Ups.
Oh, there
In
you
the
go.
in the first 3-4 minutes of Grown Ups, the opening scene is them in Adam Sandler's house, which
Right.
is in Marlborough, Massachusetts. The actual house is in Marlborough, Mass. And he's learns that his basketball coach dies, and he's on the phone with his friends, and they pan across a very, in my opinion, very nice looking pool table.
Right.
That's ours. The amount of wasted effort to put that table at that set was extraordinary. And the lack of positive outcome that we got of it sort of drove that point home where you're like, we didn't make a single sale.
Right.
Nobody even knew it was there. It was in a panning shot for 16 seconds and then another shot from a different angle. And then that's it. And I think we probably spent a week prepping, go in there, bring a team of 5, set it up, take it down, set it up, take it down, move it around because the director wants it in a different place, unpack, take it home. I mean, like total distraction theater. And it's taken 16 years for me to try to resist those urges.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not very good at it, to be honest. I still
Most people aren't.
no
Right.
no.
And a true entrepreneur is somebody who has this unique ability. This is one of the reasons why I love entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have this unique ability to see something differently than the rest of society and immediately it changes that thing that they see into this idea, and then that idea then becomes a concept, and you're spitting out this whole
Yeah.
business idea around this small thing that you saw for a flash, right? And most people can't do that, but
Yeah.
that's what entrepreneurs do on a daily basis. And
Yeah.
so understanding, hey, if I'm going 10 different directions, I'm not actually going anywhere.
Not going
I'm,
anywhere.
I'm wasting all this energy. But if I can take all that energy and focus it into one direction, one
Yeah.
destination, that's when I'm going to actually see that growth. I'm going to see that movement that I want to see.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not easy.
It's super hard. It's hard to, and you kind of have to. I don't have a perfect answer, but you sort of have to have a methodology of checking yourself, where
Yep.
you're sort of saying, we're working on a project right now. We kind of put some binary go no go decision points into this project because it's easy to just keep spending, to just keep trying to do it after the point at which you should have said, okay, stop, change direction.
Right.
It's not in my nature, and my nature is to say, we can figure this out. Let's just go.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I don't think I'm alone. I think there's a lot of people out there who have that tendency, and it's a difficult urge to push down.
Yes.
And those that do, my former agency, we were a broad do anything agency in the product. We were physical products only, but we had work going on in the toy industry. We had product work going on in the industrial markets, in the consumer markets, in the medical industry. And when that business turned over and became valuable to someone else is when everything went away except the med tech world. And they just said, we're a med device business and that's it. And, the company went from, I left, like I said, I left at about 125 people in 2007. It grew to 300 plus, and they sold it for a very nice number. I don't know what that number is, in 2014. And so I've kind of hit this point where my company, I'm like, okay, we're going to focus on the health technology sector, and we're going to focus on the industrial technology sector because we have a huge body of work in both of those places. We understand those
Right.
markets really well. We're able to talk to that audience in an intelligent way where we understand what pain points they're going to run into. There's some weird oddities about those industries. Like in this bike bag business, our customer is our user, is our customer. We sell a bag, they put it on their bike, they ride with it. In
Right.
the industrial markets, in the health technology markets, that is not the case. Your customer is a person who never uses the product.
Right.
They're someone who has buying authority, but they're not an operator, they're not a user, they're not a nurse, they're not a doctor, they're not any of those things. And so you have this layered approach to how you present a solution to that audience, which is
Right.
very different than the consumer branded goods space where I'm just trying to find you. I know
Yep.
you like these things you buy at these stores, I'm going to sell to you. It's not the same in those other categories where you have to play to two interests, and those two interests are sometimes competing and
Right.
sometimes don't even know each other. And so, but I couldn't have that conversation with a large corporate or a startup or a mid-sized company 6 or 7 years ago because I didn't know how all that worked. And so
Right.
now we've built this muscle memory to just kind of go, okay, this is how you get, this is how you produce, like this is not used by the person who buys it.
Right.
And this isn't even used by the person who evaluates the technology to understand if you want to buy it. It's used by a manufacturing operator who lives way, way, way down the food chain in a large organization. And you're convincing somebody kind of in the middle, and you have to prove it to somebody in a different side of the middle, right? You have somebody
Yep.
who's got purchasing authority here. You've got an IT specialist here who's saying, well, okay, can I integrate it? Will it fit within my system? What other things do I need? And then you have an operator that has to go, if you don't buy this for me, I can't do my job very well.
Right.
You're talking to all of them all at the same time. And if you don't talk to all of them, you're going to drop the ball in one of those places, and then the sale won't go through. And that takes time to learn that and
Yeah.
understand it and be able to articulate it to somebody else who then can do the next piece. So
Yeah. No. And that's fantastic. In your intentionality around understanding. Hey, I need to learn this, because I love the expression, hey, what got us here is not going to get us there.
Right.
So you built your company, you got to where you're at, and you want to continue to see some growth. And so now you're like, okay, how are we going to do that? Well, back to the drawing table. I've got to pivot. I've got to adjust. I've got to niche down
Yeah.
to certain verticals rather than saying yes to everybody and just being wide open. Nope. I'm going to be really intentional about who I'm serving. I'm going to niche down. I'm going to be very specific about
Yeah.
what it is I'm doing, what problem I'm solving, who I'm selling to, who my target customer is, and then understanding the complexities of, and sometimes my target customer is 3 different people all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And I love the way that you said that, and they have competing interests, because so often that is the case, right?
yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting, I haven't spent enough time with enough of these kinds of conversations to know if what I'm going to say is true, but I'll say it anyway. Part of
Okay.
what I like the most about running a business is the fact that my job is to design the business. It's to design the experience for our customer. It's to design the workforce that we have. It's to design the way our team can flow between projects, is to design the systems we have in place to allow us to be efficient. We have an office in France. We have an office here in the US. We have people who are in office all the time. We have people who are in office some of the time. We've pre 2020, everybody's offices were kind of like, it's just an office and everybody's in
Right.
an office. Now you have this like wildly more complex dynamic where if you want to know what's going on and your team is only operating in Slack, that is a closed door meeting every time.
Yep.
Not on purpose. Nobody's doing anything wrong. It's just a
Right.
function of the technology. When you had an office environment and you could walk past the conference room and see there's 3 people sitting in there, and me as the person who owns the company could say, "Hey, what are you talking about?"
Right.
And decide, do I want to insert myself into this conversation or do I not want to insert myself into this conversation? That for me personally, that was a much easier way to manage a business.
Right.
Now I have to recalibrate how I think about this because I don't want to, and I can't just say, okay, everybody, you're in the office 5 days a week.
Right.
And at the same time, there's advantages to being able to manage by walking around. And those advantages, for me personally, I've had to like completely rethink, okay, how do I, because we're a company where the projects demand collaboration and creativity every single time. It's not, we don't rinse and repeat.
Right.
Somebody comes to us with a newish problem. Maybe it's in the same vertical. Maybe it's a problem we've seen before, but from a different sort of side. But
Yeah.
they're all pretty unique, and so you're always challenging yourself and your team to make sure that you're really integrating all of the best practices that we can, that we're integrating ideas, cross functionally,
Right.
and doing that through Slack is just, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
And we see it in our clients where like we have large corporate clients where we'll say, hey, you're already working on this. Like we heard it in the other meeting and you're in this other place and you have a group that's already doing this. Maybe you should go talk to them. And they have
Right.
there's just no way to put those pieces together. And it's worse now than it was 5 years ago.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
so yeah, but that's the piece that I think I like the most is just this constant mental gymnastics of trying to figure out how to make the puzzle a little easier to put together every year.
Right.
Because then it falls, like you think you got it and then it starts to fall apart.
Yep.
And then you have to reorganize it again and then it starts to fall apart. And you're just hoping that every time you reorganize it, the puzzle just got a little bigger and a little easier to reassemble. And then some section falls away and you're trying to reassemble that again. That to me is the definition of entrepreneurship in every bit. I don't care what industry you're in.
Yeah. No, I
My
would agree with you
cycling
100%.
business we had a killer start to the year and now we're like, we're not doing as well this month. Why?
Right.
We took off. It was like a rocket ship for the first 6 months. And now the last two, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not like it was. And you're going, okay, well, what changed?
Right.
And that to me that's what this is all for, is to like exercise that part of your brain.
Oh, I love that. And to go full circle, to bring back into what you said originally, this idea or concept that you teach your students even of, hey, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to get a job so that you understand what that is. Because so often there's so many people that they're so passionate about something, whatever it is, whatever industry it is, they go after and like, I'm going to make a business out of this. And they dive in headfirst, and they're really good and passionate about this one thing, this one area, have no idea how to run a business, have no idea how to manage employees. And sometimes, I've spoken to multiple business owners. They've never even been an employee. And so now they're dealing with employees going, huh,
Yeah.
how does this work?
Yeah.
So I love your intentionality of, no, that's the whole point is I've learned along the way, and now it's my job to make sure that it's still running and that everything's working. So instead of being sucked into the business and working in the business on a day-to-day, like was the beginning, I've now had to extract myself out, and now I'm working on the business.
Right.
And I'm building up my team, and I'm training them, and I'm helping them develop and grow, and continuing to look for, hey, what's the next thing we're going to have to do? When are we going to have to pivot again? What are we going to have to, nail down on and niche down on? Where are we going to have to find the next way to continue to see that growth? That's what you get to do as the owner when you're working on the business, instead of continually being sucked down into working in the business.
Yeah. And that drag of, I mean, we've all either worked for or been the CEO who's working on a project.
Yep.
And I like working on projects. Like, it's fun. And so I have to constantly remind myself of like, okay, I know you really want to go build that, but you should probably not do that right now. And there's certain cases where it's required, and you go and you
Absolutely.
do it.
Small
But
businesses, you wear lots of hats.
yeah, but lots of times you don't have to do that. And that, like, I'm certainly not, and that's an area that I'm working on every week, to just go, okay, well, where should I spend my time, and how do I make sure that this is most valuable for the organization as a whole, and
Right.
not just me fulfilling scratching this little itch of like, oh, it'd be cool, I can put that document together.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
So one thing that we look at, and speaking to that challenge specifically, one thing that we do here at Elite Entrepreneurs is we look at this through our Elite Business Growth Method, where we say, okay, picture this mountain. On one side of this mountain, you have your daily operational needs. That's this engine that you built that's working, and it's growing, and your team's running. But then down this other side, that's your long-term strategic work. That's the work that you need to do so that you're where you need to be in 3, 4, or 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. Then up on top, we have the vision. Now, when we think of vision here at Elite, we see it as purpose, values, and then your mission and mission goals. Your purpose is why you do what you do. Your values are who we are and how we show up. And then your mission, that's the destination. This is where we're going to go to, and we're going to get. And then those mission goals, those are the metrics to ensure that, hey, once we've reached there, we know without a shadow of a doubt that we've arrived. And balancing between the daily operational needs, because this machine has to keep going. The business has to keep running. But balancing between the daily operational needs and then being intentional about this long-term strategic, that's the tricky part, right? So we look at it and we say, hey, along the bottom of this mountain, we have this balancing bar, and we refer to that as your meeting rhythm. Your meeting rhythm is your ability to say, okay, intentionally, I'm going to set aside time to focus on what needs to take place. I'm going to focus on the operational as it's needed, right? We're going to have a 15-minute huddle at the beginning of every day, right? Whether it be virtual or in person. We're going to have a weekly sales meeting. We're going to have a weekly operationals meeting, whatever, that looks like. But then on the other side, we're going to have an intentional time where we set aside time to say, okay, but we're also going to work on this strategic stuff. How am I going to reach our destination? Because what got us here to where we're at now, that's not going to get us to where we want to go.
Right.
But in 3, 4, or 5 years from now, this is where we want to be. How are we going to do that? Well, that means that we either have to, rely on things that we already know, that we're already good at, and we're going to have to pull those levers. Or, hey, I'm going to have to go learn something new. I'm going to have to go. We're going to dive into something that we haven't done before to kind of do that. So it's this intentionality of saying, hey, yes, I want to be doing this daily operations. Yes, this has to take place, but also I can't forget about this long-term strategic.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'm going to just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. And guess what? That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's identifying and deciding, okay, where do these meeting rhythms work in so that I can have that balance between ensuring the operations is happening and ensuring that we are slowly working towards, that next new thing. So it's taking this machine and saying, okay, in 1 year from now, I need to add another component to it. Maybe I need a booster, or I need a new oil pan or whatever. And then, the year after that, we're going to need new wiring harness or whatever. It's understanding that I have to keep adapting and changing this machine in order to continue to see that sustained growth that I want to see, and to stay relevant in the eyes of our target customer. So it's also doing that strategic work on deciding, okay, whom do we serve? What are we trying to help them with? And then what strengths do we have that we can leverage, and what strengths do we need to develop in order to ensure that we're meeting those needs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I buy into that wholeheartedly and struggle to make it happen quickly every week, month, quarter. And
Yep.
it's interesting because that balance between those sort of, um, I'll call them slightly opposed interests,
Mm-hmm.
are where I think businesses succeed and fail.
Yeah,
If
I would
those
agree.
get balanced correctly, um, a business succeeds over time. When they aren't balanced correctly, if you're too far out in front all the time and you're always chasing the next thing, your day to day is going to kill you. You're going to run out of cash.
Yeah,
If you're so focused on the day to day, the market's going to move and you're going to miss the next opportunity, and then you're going to run out of cash. And that balance is one that I certainly can't claim to have. I know I do think there's an opportunity with small businesses to get away, to think about that a little bit, which has worked for me. My wife actually just told me this morning. She's like, "You need to get away."
yeah,
Not get away like leave, like just get away from the grind for more than one day,
yeah.
and be able to kind of reflect on, okay, well, like, what is working, what isn't working. And at
Absolutely.
least for me personally, like, that works better when I'm not making sure we're on budget, making sure we have a happy customer, making sure we have, the next project or client lined up. It's very hard to do that when you're also,
Yep.
sort of juggling those balls. And
Yeah. No.
but
Definitely.
I think you're spot on that, like, that balance that's the magic bean for all of us.
For sure. Oh, awesome. Well, Justin, it has just been an absolute pleasure learning more about you, learning more about your company and what you do. I love your intentionality around trying to stay focused so that you're always on the forefront, right? So that you're not going to be blindsided by the market shift. You're not going to be blindsided by the shift in people's desires and wants and needs. Just absolutely love that. You're doing a great job. Just for those who are listening in today, if they're interested in what you do and reaching out to you, what's the best ways for them to reach you, Justin?
The easiest place to find me is going to be through LinkedIn, which is just my full name, Justin Sirotin. I think I'm like literally one of the only ones in the country with that combination of names.
Nice.
My company is called Octo. Our web address is octopdpauldavid.com. You can always find us through there and see like a whole body of case studies of work that we've done. The cycling bag company, if you're a cyclist out there and you're interested, is called Rootworks with an E. So ROUTEWERKS. If you ride a bike and you have Instagram, you've probably gotten one of our ads. Um,
Excellent.
and so those are going to be the three easiest ways, depending on where you're coming from. And this has been great. Super. I don't get to I don't get to tell that story very much, so it's kind of interesting to hear it. I hear myself say it. It's a good reflection on kind of where I've been over all these years. So
Yeah.
hopefully your audience gets something out of it and learns something from it.
Oh, I'm sure they will. And those of you who are listening in, um, as always, if you heard something and you're like, oh, I really like that, don't let that slip by. Put it into action. Um, you don't want to waste these opportunities to learn these or hear these golden nuggets and then not actually act on them. So make sure that you take the time and are intentional and actually act on them. And if you heard something today that you're like, you know what, I know a guy that this would really be helpful for him, or I know this businesswoman and she would fall right into this and this could be helpful for her. Let's make sure we share that. And as always, let's try to create as much value as we can to as many people as possible. Well, thanks again, Justin. We really appreciate you being a guest on our show today. Just been a great time. And this will conclude this episode of the 7 Figure Journey podcast. Till next time, take care, guys.